The unit circle is another tool that we will use over and over in our study of trigonometry. So let's talk about what the unit circle is. The unit circle is a circle on our coordinate plane. It's centered at the origin, or 0, 0. It's called the unit circle because the radius used to make the circle is 1 unit long. We can use the unit circle with both degree and radian measure, and we'll focus a lot on the radians today because that's probably the most unfamiliar to us. So let's define what is a radian. A radian is the angle that's created when the radius of the circle and the arc created by the angle are the same length. So if I have a radius of 1 and an arc length here of 1, the angle that's created here is defined to be a radian. Remember that when we measure angles on the unit circle, we always start from the positive x-axis here, and we move in a counterclockwise direction, this way. It's often helpful if we can label a few of our important special angles that we use all of the time. So the positive x-axis here will be 0 degrees, which is also 0 radians. Remember from our study of geometry that there are 360 degrees in a circle. So if we went all the way around our unit circle, we'd get back here at 360 degrees. So what is that in radians? Well, let's think about some other things that we know from geometry. From geometry, we know that the formula for circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. So what that really means is that we have 2 pi times the radius. And if you remember how we just defined a radian, we can think of that as 2 pi radians around the circle. So 360 degrees is the same thing as 2 pi of our radians. So positive x-axis starting here is 0 degrees, 0 radians. If we go all the way around, we're at 360 degrees, which is 2 pi radians. Now, we can use what we know about fractions to label some of our other important measurements. So if all the way around the circle is 2 pi, halfway around the circle would just be 1 pi. And we can also take half of 360 degrees, and that tells us that that is the same as 180 degrees. Halving that again, half of 180 degrees would put us at 90 degrees, and half of pi would be 1/2 pi, or pi over 2. We can also label a couple more important things just by using this idea of fractions. So let's say that I'm starting at 0, moving counterclockwise. So here's pi. What would this angle be? Okay, so it's pi plus another half of pi. So we have 1/2 pi, or 3 pi over 2. If we add another 90 degrees to my 180, that puts us at 270 degrees at 3/4 of the way around our circle. Let's do a couple examples of finding where different angles are on our unit circle. So let's say that we are told to find pi over 3 on the unit circle. We'll think about this in 2 different ways. One way that you can think about this is, you know where pi is. It's a half circle. So pi over 3 really means 1/3 of that pi. So if we think about pi as this half a circle, 1/3 of that would be about here. So this would be pi over 3 radians. It would be here on the circle. Another way to think about that is we know that pi is the same as 180 degrees. So you could do a quick calculation in your head, divide 180 by 3, which gives you 60 degrees, which makes you feel good about your first answer because this is approximately where 60 degrees would be on the unit circle. Now let's find where 5 pi over 4 would be on the graph. Okay? Again, we'll think about it in a couple of ways so that hopefully you can find a way that makes the most sense to you. Let's start with thinking about it in terms of fractions. 5/4. Now that's a fraction larger than 1. So if we have 5/4 of pi, we know that we're going to go pi and a little bit more. So 5/4, sometimes it helps to think of it as a mixed number. 4 goes into 5 one whole time with 1 left over. So 1 1/4. So we're going to go 1 pi and 1/4 of another one, which puts us right here on the unit circle. So from the 0 counterclockwise to here would have a measure of 5/4 of pi. Another way that you can think about it, if it helps you, you can remember that pi is the same thing as 180 degrees. So if you take 180 and multiply it by 5 and divide by 4, you would get the equivalent degree measure at that angle. In this example, let's find where negative 7 pi over 6 would be on the graph. The first thing that we have to think about is all of a sudden we have a negative angle measure. What does that mean? Well, remember that normally we start at the positive x-axis and we move counterclockwise for our angles. When an angle is negative, we still start at the positive x-axis, but we move clockwise instead. So we're going to be moving in the opposite direction for this angle because it's negative. So now let's think about our 7 pi over 6. Is that more than a pi or less than 1 pi? Well, it's more. So I have 7 pi over 6 is 1 1/6 pi. So that means I'm going to start at my positive x-axis. I'm moving in a clockwise direction because of the negative. I move 1 pi, and then I want to go 1/6 more. Okay? So we take a second and we think, what would 1/6 of pi be? Well, remember, pi is 180. So if you divide 180 by 6, you get 30 degrees. So we want to start here. We want to move a whole pi and about 30 degrees more. So from here to here, this angle is negative 7 pi over 6. So what we've done is we've combined our knowledge of fractions with our knowledge of the unit circle to help us find where different radian measured angles are on our unit circle.